Welcome to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio coverage of bbcon 2012. We're outside Washington, D.C. at the Gaylord Convention Center. My guests now are Misty McLaughlin. She's a Principal User Experience Consultant at Blackbaud, and Lacey Kruger, Lead Information Architect at Blackbaud. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to have you both. Lacey, I have to ask you, what does a Lead Information Architect do for a big company like Blackbaud?
I work with nonprofit clients of all shapes and sizes to really help create a intuitive structure for their content. So organizing the information they present on the website in a way that people that are using the website can understand it.
Okay, and that really is a sort of a definition of information architecture, is putting content together so that it's, I guess, intuitive, usable, user-friendly, all concerned about the user experience?
Right. It's a blueprint for an online experience. So it's the structure of the information.
Okay. And your topic that we're talking about is getting your priorities straight, a guide to successful information architecture. Misty, let's see, what's the first idea that you have around information architecture? Let's start basic and we'll build from there.
And move up. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So in my presentation, I outlined sort of a top 10 list, like any good late night talk show host. Anything that you can be doing, things that nonprofits typically get wrong on websites. And I would say almost everything on my list, more than half of the nonprofits that we work with just get it wrong. So the number one thing that I would say most nonprofits fail at, and that's the most important online for kind of creating an effective experience, for bringing people in and getting people to stay on their website, is articulating their mission in a really short, compelling, concise way that's almost at the level of the vision of the organization. It's what is the social problem that we're trying to address, and what is our particular impact or approach on the world? How are we responding to that?
What are charities doing wrong around this?
Well, typically, organizations have their mission. They know what their mission is. They want to present too much. So they either err on the side of, here are 5 sentences from my annual report. I'm going to put that right on my homepage, which no one can read. It's super text heavy. It bogs people down. People just don't even see it. Or they just go for a tagline that might be cute, but it doesn't really talk about what the organization is doing, how they're changing the world. So particularly a new visitor coming into a website, they just can't figure out if they've landed in the right place. People just lose tons of new traffic because they're not.
Really? You're not even sure they're in the right site?
They're not even sure. Well, they might sort of think, all right, this organization has something to do with what I'm after, but it doesn't seem like they're really kind of making an impact, or this isn't necessarily the cause that I want to learn more about or I want to support. So a lot of the time, if somebody's coming to you through a Google search, you don't clearly articulate your mission, you just don't get another chance.
Okay. Lacey, now in the last session, I just learned what a lightbox is. I'm sure you both know what now, is this appropriate for a lightbox on a? Why don't you explain what a lightbox is? Because everyone listening to this may not have heard the other session. Explain what a lightbox is, and then this is a totally, just a neophyte question. Is a lightbox an appropriate place for your concise mission statement? After you tell us what a lightbox is.
Okay, so a lightbox is kind of a non-obtrusive pop-up. It allows the user to see the content behind the pop-up, so it interrupts the experience with the message that the organization wants to get across, but you can still visualize what's behind the message. So it's really easy to click out of it and dismiss the message.
It's one of those. It's a shaded box. You can see behind it.
Exactly.
You can X out.
Yes.
Okay. So my neophyte question is that compelling? Is that compelling enough for a lightbox, having this concise mission statement?
I would not suggest it.
Okay.
I think a lightbox, a better use for a lightbox is something that has a specific action you want users to take. Something like donate now, or take action, or fill out this form, or something. And with learning about the organization, learning about their mission, you really want them to explore and click around and read different stories you have. It's not just one thing. It's a multitude of different inputs to the experience.
So it's okay if people have to click to find the concise mission statement that Misty is talking about?
You should
This wasn't such a neophyte question. I thought maybe it's important enough that it rises to the level of Lightbox, but I understand it doesn't. Where should it be?
It should be something that comes across in the homepage. So one of the things that we do is we gauge a user's reaction to the homepage. So we show a homepage to a user. This is a usability test. We show them the homepage and we say, what adjectives would you use to describe this page? And if those adjectives match your organization's mission and your messaging, then you're in good shape. But oftentimes they don't.
That's that's basically a focus group for the homepage?
It's a usability, yeah, basically. It's a usability test, and you can do it online. So it's really quick, and you don't have to get people all in the room together.
I see. Okay. Now that sounds a little sophisticated, but a small and mid-sized charity could probably do something like that. Maybe at a board meeting, or at a maybe they do host a little event or something like that. If they don't have in other words, if they don't have the wherewithal to create something online, isn't this doable in a little round table or something like that?
Sure. And another great free place to get input from your users is your social media channels. So you can publish a test like this for free online, and you can post a link to it on Facebook or Twitter, and then people that are following you there can click to it, and those are your users. So it's a great free way to recruit people to help.
Okay. Misty, we'll come back. You know the number 2 now. I don't know if Lacey knows. Lacey, do you know the same number 10 that Misty knows? The same top 10 list? Or?
Roughly.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
so
why don't you throw out another one, whether it's number 2 or not? We'll never know.
all right. So a few others that I think are worth mentioning. One is storytelling. And one of the most important things that an organization can do is both tell and show the impact of its mission. So showing can happen in a couple of different forms. Something like an infographic, where you're showing a few key statistics for those kind of analytical thinkers, those people who are considering making an investment in the organization, who want to know what kind of an impact you're having. Something like an infographic on the homepage that says, we provide vaccination for 50% of the world's children. That's something UNICEF does. It's a powerful number. They can visually represent that in a way that's really compelling. What they also do well is they do this sort of show and tell of an individual who's really being helped. Look at this 2-year-old who's receiving vaccinations and how it's changed his family's life, how it's extended his lifespan. That kind of storytelling is something that nonprofits often don't do. And when Lacey and I talk to organizations and we actually go out and talk to their audience, the number one thing that people say they want more of universally is stories. It's stories that help them really get a feel for the emotional impact of the organization and make them connect to it.
What are some of the best ways of telling these stories?
Well, personal profiles are one way, and the organization can really kind of find a few kind of key faces and a few key stories. Another great way is actually to get people whose lives have been transformed to tell their own story. And that's one of the ways the web is really powerful, that you can really solicit content from people who were personally involved or helped by the organization and get them to tell the story of what's happened, how their life has changed as a result of it.
And Lacey, telling it in what format? Are we talking about video, or it's print, or it's all these, or what?
Video is a great option. I think it's important to have the text as well. The text as the substance of the story. But video, if you have some video testimonials, those can be very powerful tools. You do need something to draw somebody in to make them want to watch the video. So it's kind of a lot to ask for somebody to click and watch an entire video about something. But if you give them a preview of it and make them, compelled to watch it, then a video would be a great way to tell the full story.
Do you have advice around how long something like this should be? Or are we talking about doing this in just 2 or 3 minutes to increase the viewers, or 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, short is better. Yeah. Our attention spans are not what they used to be, so shorter is always better, I think.
Okay. All right. So aside from sharing impact and outcomes vividly, Lacey, why don't you give us another idea around information architecture?
So one idea that we see a lot of is organizations that structure their content like their organization is structured. So they organize it by department or different division that the organization works with, And while that makes a lot of sense to the organization and they can each kind of own a section of the website, it doesn't make sense for their users. I don't know what your marketing department does versus your fundraising department, and I don't really care. I just care kind of what are you doing on the ground. So I think using structures and labels that resonate with your users and not necessarily your internal stakeholders. Users need to come first in their perspective.
Okay, and how do we figure out how our users are thinking about our organization and how the information should be organized?
There's various ways to research that. There's some low-cost ways. We've talked about smaller nonprofits, so just talking to people and asking them kind of what they think. There's a research technique called card sorting that you can present to users basically a set of cards with the types of content you offer. So these stories would be one of them. News articles would be another one. Events would be another one. And then you ask them to group things, to group the content according to what makes sense to them. And then you can use that to really guide the structure of your website.
Okay. Is there more you wanted to say about that, Misty?
There are a ton of user research methods, and I think that this kind of gets to the heart of what user experience is, which is that we really take the approach that an organization has goals they want to achieve online, but the only way they're going to do that is if they begin from the place of their audience. So they really research and map out and understand who these folks are. Lacey and I often develop personas, which are kind of detailed portraits of the major audience groups that an organization is trying to reach, online or offline, and try to really understand what it is that's driving and motivating that particular type of person. And that's how we organize content, we create an experience.
Okay, let's talk about some, this is interesting. Personas are hypothetical, ideal people. What do you know about these personas? What do you create about them?
So we really try and make that a storytelling exercise, which is demographic information. It's kind of fundamental. It's also attitudes, motivations, perceptions, behavior, goals. It's sort of all of the reasons that someone might be seeking out your organization or that you might be trying to get them to be aware of who you are. So they can also be aspirational. It doesn't have to just be people that you're reaching today. It can be people that you're really trying to seek, but you failed to be able to connect with well. What's great about personas is that they give you a framework, kind of strategic, audience-oriented framework as an organization to get your marketing department and your fundraising department and your programs folks all organized around the same type of folks. So that not just your website, but your offline communications, your email marketing, your social media presence, all of that is organized around the same core audience groups. It's a really good internal tool for building consensus and getting people on the same page.
Okay, excellent. And I want to remind listeners that I had a guest, James Heaton, who's CEO of the Tronvig Group. His work is around marketing, and he and I talked a lot about building these personas also. But since I'm live at a conference, I don't remember the date of that show. I can't access it, but look for James Heaton on the blog. Search for him as a guest, and you'll find a very similar conversation to what we're talking about right now.
Super.
Creating these hypothetical personas. And he talked a lot about involving the board.
Yes.
Especially in the aspirational personas.
Yes.
Anything you want to add in that respect? Go ahead.
So part of our process is that we begin with stakeholders, and we like to begin from the kind of all the way from the bottom all the way to the top of the organization and everything in between. So board is really critical, particularly board because they're removed from the day-to-day operations of the organization a lot of the time. But then the web folks, the customer support people who answer the phone, and they hear the kinds of complaints, but they really know who these folks are because they're talking to them.
Okay.
So really at all levels of the organization, trying to get stakeholder input and then help people to kind of organize around these personas, including the board, because it can really shape the board's vision of who you're going after. It can really mold it. And it can be a tool for getting board members all on the same page with each other.
As you had said. Excellent. Okay. Excellent. Lacey, let's go to another good practice in... Wait, let me ask you first. Did either of you major in information architecture? Is there such a major?
There
Wait, okay.
is.
Misty is saying yes.
I am saying yes. You might not believe it, but I have a master's degree in information architecture and usability.
Okay.
Yes, so it is a program out there in the online world, and I'll just say it comes from the discipline of information science. So that's, organizing libraries, organizing video games, organizing any place that's an information or an interactive space. These kinds of principles apply. You can really learn a lot there. So that's the kind of background that I come from. Lacey comes from an interactive advertising background.
Okay, I was going to ask Lacey in a second, but tell us where your master's degree program is, in case someone's interested in such a degree.
If they are interested in such a degree, University of Texas School of Information.
Okay. Lacey, how did you become an information architect?
So I was an advertising major at the University of Texas, and they had an interactive advertising sequence that was just a special series of classes that I took. And so that was the beginning, and then I worked at an ad agency for a while, and then moved into the nonprofit space at Convio, and really worked with Misty to develop our methodology around design and really dive into the information architecture side of things. So it was a slow transition. When I graduated from college, interactive was so new that there weren't really information architects. So as soon as that niche kind of created itself, I found that was where my home was. That was where I was meant to be. So.
Okay. I fear that all these years I've been mispronouncing the name of your former company, Convio.
Everyone
that's incorrect,
does.
Right? That's wrong? Convio.
Convio.
Is there a reason it's Convio and not Convio?
It's a schwa, as they say.
I'm going back to, this is like fourth grade English. My homeroom teacher taught me, like more than second grade or so, a schwa.
A schwa.
Convio.
Yeah, so I think that people sometimes they reach for convict, and so convio seems like a natural stress,
Okay.
but actually in English, apparently, I'm married to a linguist, we put the stress on the second to the last syllable in many cases, so convio.
Okay, that would be the Italian pronunciation too.
Convio.
It's very common in Italian to have this accent on the second to last.
That's right, and
syllable. Right.
So in Latin, convio means with vision, and that's where the name came from. That's how the founder
Okay,
developed it.
excellent. An information architect married to a linguist.
It is true.
All right. Lacey, let's talk about another good practice in information architecture.
So one of the ones that comes to mind is creating a visual hierarchy. So on your homepage specifically, you want to identify what the key points, the key messages you want to convey. So like Misty talked about earlier, your mission and vision should be number one. But there's also probably some actions that you want to encourage from your homepage. So I think that having a visual hierarchy that it's basically a design principle that ensures that the big key salient points are what stands out visually on the page. So they might be, a different color. They might just be a graphic next to some text. But the visual hierarchy is what conveys to users, look at me first, look at me second, and tells them, kind of guides their experience around a page.
Okay, and you would develop that through users, talking to users about how they are going through your site and versus how you'd like them to be going through your site, or do you do it more based around the way they're doing it, whether you want them to or not?
So the inputs are both from the users and from the stakeholders. So our job as information architects is really to combine those two sometimes distinct set of needs. So the stakeholders want to communicate X, Y, and Z, and the users are looking for, A, B, and C. And so it's a meshing together of those two things that designates what the visual hierarchy should be. And that's sometimes a balancing act, but usually the stakeholder messaging, what the organization wants to convey, kind of comes first, because it's like, this is what we want you to get across.
Can I add one thing there?
No,
done.
Lacey's wrapped it up.
It was perfect.
Your colleague has given an insufficient explanation. Is that what you're saying?
We work together a lot, so we tend to tag team on
Okay,
these
I don't
things.
want to cause any tension in the office. No, of course you're welcome to. Please, Misty, go ahead.
So we often use web analytics data. I think one thing that's hard, right, is you talk to people can often describe their attitudes and their motivations, but they don't really know what their behaviors are. They're just sort of predicting, I think I would act like this. So analytics data is a really great kind of hard metric sort of way to look at trends and how people use an information structure, a website. What do they really interact with? What are they seeing? What are they not even seeing? So a lot of the time, the kind of piece of this that we can bring, in addition to research we really do with the audience, surveys, that sort of thing, is a real behavioral picture of how people are using the site. And that helps to really inform ways that we think people will use it and what we can do with it.
Okay, and what are some of the ways that we influence how they move through a site? Is it as simple as font size? I mean, Lacey mentioned color. Is it as simple as these things?
Visual priority, top to bottom orientation. Navigation is obviously the primary tool that people use to traverse when they're really looking for something to move in and out of a website. You can do a lot that's really powerful with having really strong navigation devices. And then there are just a variety of ways that we can provide pathways into the content. So, you can throw all your content up there, and some people think that's the solution, that more is better. Lacey and I really take the approach that more is not necessarily better. If you have a ton of content, what you're trying to do is move people strategically down paths towards the content that they're looking for. And that having a lot of clicks is not necessarily a bad thing. That used to be kind of the common wisdom with the web. No clicks. You really want people to get everything from the homepage. But actually what people want is to feel like they're on a journey towards the thing that they're looking for, that they're making progress. And if you can help them do that, they don't actually mind moving around to find the thing that they want.
Okay. Ladies, I'm going to guess that you have a lot of frustration as you navigate the web.
Yes.
Whether it's charitable or non-charitable sites that you go to, is there a lot of frustration? Go ahead, Lacey.
There's frustration, but there's also a lot of inspiration. I would say I didn't major in information architecture, and the majority of my training and education about this has been my own experiences online. So I learn a lot from other sites. When I'm looking for something on Amazon.com and I can find it like that, that's something that I'll take with me and translate to what we're working on. So there's good and bad. There's definitely some poor experiences out there, but there are good ones too.
Lacey, why don't you share, what is it you love about information architecture work that you do?
I would say it's very creative without being visually creative. It allows me to really kind of use my intellect to think about how things should be organized, and the graphic design part of it is very important, but I think separating the information side of it from the graphic side of it allows for a bigger picture and allows for a cleaner end solution.
Okay.
And I think there's also just so many facets to information architecture. So we design the navigation structures and the way the content looks on the page, but we also design the back-end data structures and how an administrator would put the content into the system. So it's just a big universe of different types of work, and it keeps things interesting and dynamic all the time.
Misty, how about you? What is it you love about this work? We just have a couple of seconds.
Yeah, so I would say good IA is like a good therapist, that it anticipates your needs before you even know that you have them sometimes, that it gives you something that you may not be able to get anywhere else, and that it sort of satisfies you in a way that keeps you coming back again and again. So I like helping people get what they want and get their needs met.
Excellent. Their session was Getting Your Priorities Straight, a guide to successful information architecture. Misty McLaughlin is Principal User Experience Consultant at Blackbaud, and Lacey Kruger is Lead Information Architect at Blackbaud. And you are listening to Tony Martignetti Nonprofit Radio coverage of bbcon 2012. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Thank you.